February 17th to order with the approval of the agenda. Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Approval of the minutes. Anybody seen any mistakes or anything?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
We have a second. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of the February 3rd meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Public comments, 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 30 minutes. Do we have any, Bob, that aren't public hearing related?
Everybody in the West, Mr. Chair, is for the public hearing.
Okay. Anybody online?
Could have been. I don't know.
Mr.
Yeah,
Bird,
there's an old gas station, I think, right in Danbury.
Yeah,
And,
that's what he was.
yeah.
But he always.
anyone on the phone providing public comments?
Oh, right. Yeah.
All right, one more time. Any more public comment?
What'd you find last night?
If not, we can close public comment. If somebody has a conflict, they can raise their hand when we get there. Any supervisors online?
Sir.
All right, tax delinquent properties. Mo, you're up.
That other property behind Wilbur Court there is now listed with the realtor, so we're just waiting to see how many offers we get on that.
And how big was that chunk again?
That was 19 acres, 19.1 acres.
Okay.
And then the other one last month, Mr. Chair, that I talked about was the property down in Wanderoos. Those 2 lots in the town of Garfield. Went to the town chairman, they brought it back to the board meeting. The township is only interested in, they pay for the deed transfer of the property, but they don't want to buy the 2 lots. So they're still tax delinquent. One's 1,240, 91 cents, and one's 469.14. The question being, would you want to just deed these over to the town and have it on them, or would you want us to keep it on here and continue to try to sell them on auction?
I would be for deeding them over and just being done. We're never
It says it's mostly swamp. It says it's mostly swamp.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if they're willing to pay for the deed transfer, as far as I'm concerned, that's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But do we need a motion for that? All right, would someone like to make a motion to deed that over to the town of Garfield for the transfer only costs?
I'll make a motion to deed it over to the town of Garfield for the transfer cost.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. That's all I have.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Chad.
Good morning.
You have the digital copy you want to take?
Oh, sure. Thanks.
That's the one. Yep.
All right, good morning, everyone. You have a copy of the claims summary. The individual claims are with the the acting chairman there. If you want to see them, you're welcome to, but I don't make copies because of all the personal information that are on them. Just a couple notes to this year. If you remember 2 meetings ago, I gave you a summary of the enrollees. There was 24 in the damage program in Polk County last year. So more than 50%, a little more than 50% of those used the damage prevention side of the program. We have 10 claims, which is good. That's probably, it just depends on the county. Another interesting, based from last year, only 3 of the claimants in front of you are from 2019. So 7 of those are new or reoccurring from previous years. What you can see is what's in front of you, but what you can't see are the claims that are not. And I just want to highlight 2 of them that we had last year that we do not have this year. And one was just about a $3,000 goose claim to soybeans, and the other was almost a $6,000 claim to nursery trees from deer rubbing. And you have neither one of those. And the program spent about a combined $1,000 to prevent all of that loss this year with those 2. And what you always see are the claims that are here, and I don't highlight well the ones that are not. So I just want to make a note of that we do get some success with prevention in some cases. So I think in the future I'll highlight some more of that with you, like visually what I use for that. Questions on ETC?
Bear is becoming a bigger problem? Or not? I mean, I just see here,
The majority of the claims. All of these, there is a lengthy list of eligibility requirements for this program. All of them meet Wisconsin Wildlife Damage Program requirements and the Polk County Plan of Administration. In some cases, you would have a claim in front of you. I would ask that be not approved, but that is not the case. Our recommendation for the 10 there is approval.
any other questions? Motion for approval of the 2020 wildlife.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the 2020 wildlife damage claims. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
All I have. Thank you.
So can I claim beaver taking all our trees down?
Not a covered species, actually.
It's amazing how much damage they can do. I'm searching for a trapper. Huh?
Bob, I see Ben is upstairs. Do you want to take 11? I mean, that seems to be the one we could jump to and maybe not, I'll say muck things up too bad. The what?
Otherwise, you're behind.
Yep, but he's coming for, I'm assuming you're here for the Horse Creek watershed. Yep. So that'll be at 10:30.
Oh, we're on agenda item 11, which is simply just the update on the Stour Seven Lakes trail development. Well, the brush work has been completed. It has been for a week or 2 now. The rustic trail is in place. It meets trail standards as well. What we've been waiting on is signage. That's all been ordered and nearly all of it has arrived. So that is a big piece. We also ordered a groomer and a snowmobile for grooming Andy and Aldrin. I believe we'll eventually go out and groom the existing trails out there, so that provides an alternative recreational opportunity for cross-country skiing. I think that's the remaining signage we're waiting on, is the actual cross-country signage for Auburn and Dean Kennedy. They're on 5 different locations on stage 1. Again, stage 1 is Baker, Keller to Baker Avenue, roughly an eighth of a mile. Five locations, there's some grade. And so we are going to install some railings, an additional safety feature for those using the rest of the trail. And that's still pending. So we're looking at doing that as early as next week, or as early as this week. I know they were out doing locates yesterday. That's about all I have for the trail development. I will tell you, there is litigation. We did receive a summons. Staff, including myself, have worked with Malia and our legal team in responding to those claims.
Let's jump to
Do 14. 13? 14.
I don't care, whichever one you want to do. Let's do 13. Let's start on 13B at least.
13B, sure. Well, let me get you this.
I guess, do we have as a committee anything that we want Malia, our intervener, to take a meeting in the next month sometime, probably, Malia? Is that concerns, hey, it's great, we love it, it's whatever it is. What message do we want to send with Malia to that meeting? I will say, I have, my biggest concern still comes back to, they got that, what looks on paper to be 100-yard stretch that isn't fenced. That's going to shoot deer across. Is it a county highway? Is it just a town road? I have no idea. It's what?
It's a county road.
Okay, so they're gonna take a funnel and shoot it down into a little bitty gap, and then they're only gonna give the deer that 20 acres on the other side to be in, and then have to turn around and come back and hopefully hit this little gap again. I would like to see the state make them fence that 100 yards off. I think it's gonna be a horrible nightmare as far as traffic, as far as deer on the road, because if they come out and miss one of those openings, they've got a big stretch of county road that they got to go down and stay realistically on the road or however far off of the road that fence ends up being. And I think asking them to build another 100 yards of fence, it isn't about them having to build 100 yards of fence. To me, it's about the safety issue of keeping them deer off that road. If they could funnel down and cross that road and just go to the other side and keep going, but when they get across the road, if they hit that 20-acre patch, they're going to be locked in there with nowhere to go but back again.
I kind of looked at that again today when I drove up, because I come right up past that. And if you actually look at the map and look at everything, I don't know how many solar panels are going to, I don't think it's going to be a full half mile, depending on how much trees they take out, because in Clayton Township, around that building, there's a patch where it's like a pond and everything that goes through there. So I guess that would be my question is, are they going to fence everything in that, where they have their outline? Or, and then the other side, on the west side of the road, it narrows down to, I don't think you're going to put too many solar panels there. So it may not be as big of a stretch. I guess that's the question would be is, are they going to fence everything they have in that? Or are they only going to fence where they have their panels? And, how much?
Because if they're not moving anything, it may not be that bad if they actually, when you drive down the road.
So I
you know,
wonder
you
if we
cross-
could get that question answered from the developer ahead of time, just so we know exactly what we're talking about when we go.
Yeah, 'cause when I look at their map, I just take it as that everything that they have in that shaded area, that's where the fence is gonna be, because it's, at times it does narrow down, you know, around a swamp, around a field.
Bob, can you bring that map up?
No, I can't unless I go to my office. You need it right now? Can I read it?
Go to your office. We got 13 minutes to kill, yeah.
So yeah, I looked at that again today, and like I said, you know, if, depending on, because the end of the one field on the west side of the road, I mean, it's pretty narrow, so I don't know that they're gonna stick a bunch of panels in there.
Yeah, like I say, I just looked at it and went with their colored map and said, this is what they've shaded, so this is where they're gonna fence. I mean, because you can see.
Those deer crossing signs, you just put the signs up.
Right.
They have to go, they can't go here, they can't go there. Flashing signs and say, deer crossing.
Yeah, so that's.
Well, actually, it'd be easier if he had to, if he could bring it up on GIS, that would actually be the easiest. Because this is a little bit different. See, like the end of this field right here is very narrow. It comes down to a point around the swamp. And then this is kind of an open area right here. On that side of the road. If you can bring it up on GIS, aerial.
I got it.
It might be easier if you come and look at the map. So like, this is the southern end of the one field. So I don't know if this is actually gonna come down to here, and then if you look, there's like a swamp in here. You know, I don't know if that's included or not.
Right, but here is my concern. We're gonna funnel all the deer right to here. And then when they cross this county road,
Okay,
this is
this is a town road. This is the county road. Here's Highway range.
okay, but even so, if we're gonna cross that little bitty spot into a 20-acre spot, only to come back out and then be on this town road for maybe a quarter mile each way without being able to get off the road. And that's my concern. I mean, that deer that gets stuck in there in the middle of the night or, you know, at 8 o'clock tonight, and you're driving down the road and he's bouncing back and forth across the road, somebody's gonna get him. And I think asking him to fence that little bitty portion more is.
There and here. So that you
Yeah.
can go up there. But, you know, when you talk about the county road, really, there's a mile there.
Right.
Depending on what happens here and here, that they can't get across other than going through the intersection.
Right.
That would be more of my concern is that mile, you know, that's why when you talked about the setback off the road, how far that setback was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree, because if they get in there, it's the same way, but on the other side, on the town road, they're actually building a funnel door for them. And then once they cross the town road, they can't get anywhere but have to come back again.
Well, and also when you look at that zigzag kind of in the middle, you know, is there actually gonna be panels put there to allow them to go this way? You know, is that gonna actually get used or not? For
Yeah.
panels?
But that would be, there again, I'll say that's my concern is that town road where they cross and get stranded because there's nowhere for them to go. I mean, the county road is too, but that's an end. They're not necessarily being funneled down into that spot. On that town road, I see that as nothing more than a funnel to shoot back and forth. I think there's gonna be, for the first year or two, I think there's gonna be a pile of deer killed on the road. Because they're gonna get caught there with nowhere to go. And then my other concern is because it looks like they're fencing in a lot of upland, swampland, whatever it might be. I would like to see their detailed plan of how they're gonna, I mean, they've said repeatedly that, you know, that they don't want, I'll just go with white-tailed deer in there because they can't have them rubbing on the panels. What's the plan to get them out of that swamp before the last of the fence is built? You know, how are they gonna get them out of that chunk?
Before the fencing goes up?
Well, before the last of the fence goes up. I mean, I would, because they said that, they don't want them in there. Well, once that fence is built, they're not getting out. And nothing's getting in. So what's the detailed plan to get the deer chased out of there?
But how much of that swamp are they actually gonna fence? Because they're probably not gonna fence anymore than they have to, if I had to guess. Like on the east side of Double J there in Clayton Township, from the intersection of D and Double J, they're probably not gonna take part of that because there's a house there. And then there's some trees and a swamp there. You know, they're probably not, it's probably gonna be just field land that gets fenced, if I had to guess.
Yeah, the trouble is they've shaded it all. I mean, when I look at it, they're telling me that everything in the shaded areas, they're gonna fence. And if they're gonna fence all of that, then there's gonna be, what I'm guessing to be some deer in there. On the fields, yeah, it's pretty easy to know if you're just fencing in a field that the deer isn't standing out in the field. But if they're gonna fence some of that in, what's the plan to get them out? And then, once the fence is up, that's the plan to keep them out. They're not gonna get back in at that point. So. Anybody else with anything?
I still have concerns about the disposal of solar panels when they reach their lifespan or they get damaged. Because I know she said that they've been okay to landfill them and stuff. It's just something that I don't know that we know enough about in general, what that's going to mean if we start landfilling solar panels. I don't know. I know there's issues with the wind turbines being buried. And when I asked who would recycle them, she said, well, she didn't know yet. That has to be determined because they're not sending them to the Polk County Recycling Center. Who's able to recycle solar panels here in this area? I have concerns about that. I know it's longer term.
Yeah.
But we need to think about that kind of stuff too, because eventually those panels are going to go.
25 years into the future, it's pretty hard to know
Yeah.
what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, and I think, yeah,
We don't have an answer now.
No, but what's the plan to get an answer? Yeah, I don't know.
and it's almost ahead of, I don't want to say ahead of its time, but if it's early in the game, solar power wise, so to speak. So
Yeah.
what is 25 years down the road, like you say, bring us? Maybe it isn't an issue, but it'd be nice to know a little bit of a plan at least today. I mean, what is,
Yeah.
other than putting them in a
Somebody's gotta be
landfill
thinking
or
about it.
recycling them. I mean,
Yeah.
So,
all right. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
just one final thought. It is on tomorrow's county board meeting agenda. It is in the consent agenda. I think it was placed there because, well, we've spent a lot of time vetting this project, and so I will tell you, and I'll put this in next meeting's packet, is we took the time to compare the changes from the first draft JDA to the master, the final draft. And it's quite a list. In fact, I don't have time to go through with it, but I just wanted to point out that our participation really made an impact on the development of that final JDA. But I'll put that in the next packet, and I'll bring it to tomorrow's board meeting if it is pulled from the consent.
All right.
I did talk to Kara yesterday. She did contact me. And I just briefly asked her, so when the different towns approved to sign on to the JDA as, you know, the final, how do we go about that? I mean, is it one signature page and all of us got to try to coordinate, you know, getting signatures on one page? She said, no, what you can do is you can take for each individual town or even county, what you can do is take the signature page itself and you can sign it as the town of Clayton and then just X off each other municipality that's on there. Or you could try to coordinate it. She said it's not likely going to happen that you're going to send one signature page around and have everybody sign it. So there's a couple different things that she did mention yesterday. So not sure how you guys want to coordinate it, if you want to try to do this, if you want everybody individually to do this.
Thank you for looking into that. I think it's their responsibility to collect those signatures.
Right. And that's why she did mention that about if you want to sign as town of Clayton, cross off everybody else who hasn't signed it on your page. And, it'd be a lot of different signature pages attached to the JDA itself, but at least they would have everybody's,
And they're just looking to have everybody's name on it. They don't care if it's 6 more pages at the end, just so that everybody has signed it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. It is 9:31. We'll go ahead and start the public hearing.
So the first public hearing we have of the two is for Nick Walton Properties. He requests a rezone from residential Ag 5 and general business commercial B1 to mining M1. The location is Lot 3, CSM number 4603 in the northeast quarter of the northeast quarter, Section 5, Town 35 North, Range 17 West, in the town of Milltown. There is a pond on the property. The parcel is 18.46 acres. The parcel number is 040-00121-0300. With that, on the GIS map here, this is Highway 35. just south of Luck. It's 240th Avenue. If we go over here, 1619 is an existing pit owned by Nick Walton Properties as well. He's been operating out of that location for quite a while. The property that along Highway 35 here is what's currently zoned general business commercial. And then beyond that, there's a small strip here, about 150 feet wide, over on the west side, that's zoned residential Ag 5. So, but all this area here is what's being proposed to be rezoned to mining M1. We do have Exhibit 3 from the DNR, which is confirming that this little pond here on the south end is considered a navigable water. And also, this little wetland here is recognized by the DNR as an official wetland, and that on their wetland maps. And the DNR is the one that, you know, carries the official wetland maps. So that was submitted by Kathleen Kamarzi. And so that was Exhibit 3. Exhibit 4 that I have in the file, and that is just a map of the zoning layers, and that showing that there's commercial area and then the RA5 area over on the west side. We received a letter from the DOT, and I'll just read it to you. It's from Dina Ryan, and it was addressed to Lori from our office. WISDOT has reviewed the proposed district changes. At this time, WISDOT has expectations for parcel number 04012100300 that access will not be allowed to State Highway 35 because the parcel has alternative access to the local roadway of 240th Avenue. So basically, the DOT is saying in that they're not going to provide access out to Highway 35 for this. That Walton, if approved, would have to access off from 240th Avenue. Exhibit 2 is the board meeting minutes from the town of Middletown. It was their January 11th, 2021 meeting. And they made a motion and that to rezone from RA5 to M1 property located at 240th Avenue and Highway 35 on the southwest side. Motion by John Eckel, second by Chris Nelson to approve, and it passed. So that was the town approval that we had. With that, this whole site is fairly level, it's fairly flat. There's only about 10 feet of elevation changed throughout the area. So it's got that close mine and that's, you know, literally touching and that to the northwest of the proposed site here. You know, with town approval and that's all I've got for staff.
And we have the applicant on the phone.
Correct. Yep. Nick is down south currently. I think I'm jealous, but anyway, he asked to appear via WebEx and that, and I said that would be fine. So, can you turn Nick on, Bob?
He's on.
Okay, can you hear us, Nick?
I can hear you.
Do you have anything that you want to add?
Typically, all I'm really asking to do there is I would like to just flatten out that property. There's a hill virtually the center of it and more on the north end. It's quite a bit higher than the rest, and what I would want to do there is just flatten that out and turn it back into some better farmland eventually. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Any questions for Nick from the committee at this point, or? If not,
Nick, can you tell us what you're going to be doing there as far as, you're not going to be doing washing and all, I mean, how much work are you actually going to be doing there on a daily basis?
We do all our processing, washing and everything to the north at my pit across the road. Potentially all I'm gonna do is I would like to keep as much of this farm, it's rented to a local farmer. I'd like to have him farm as much of that as possible. So I only want to open up a small area, and as I use it, I want to close it back up with black dirt so he can keep farming it. And once I get to the point where the hill is gone, I'm planning on turning it right back into farmland. Most likely be reselling it at that time.
okay, all right, for now, thanks, Nick. Is there any public comment on this one upstairs?
Mr. Chair, we do have some comments in the west. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, this is just on the Milltown site now.
You have no comments on the Milltown site? Mr. Chair, no comments on the Milltown site.
Okay, all right. With that, Jason, can we close the public hearing now? All right, with that, we will close the public hearing on this request.
And so findings of fact and conclusions, and that is that the town has approved.
Yeah. I know the state won't allow a driveway to Highway 35.
And then we got the pond on the south end.
You know, and a wetland on the property.
No processing on site from the applicant's testimony, and that was going to be done at the existing pit to the north.
When you say processing, Jason, you mean like washing and things like that?
And it is in line with the county's comprehensive plan. Being along 35 and also it's close to another mining site. Anything else?
Sounds good.
Ready for motion?
Okay, someone make a motion one way or the other on the request to rezone to mining in the town of Milltown.
Make a motion, accept the rezone.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the rezone in the town of Milltown. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Which one you want to sign? Go for it.
Did you vote?
At 9:43, we will open the public hearing for a rezone in the town of Eureka.
The second public hearing this morning, and that was submitted by Nick Walton Properties LLC, requesting to rezone a piece of property from agricultural 10 to mining M1. The location is the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter, section 2, town 35 north, range 18 west, town of Eureka. The parcel is 39.02 acres. Parcel number affected is parcel 02000380000. Bob's got that up on a map. So it is fronted only by a town road, 190th Street. 190th Street going to the north ends up being a T, and that with another town road. And going to the south, it goes down to County Road G, and that going west of Middletown. This would be a couple miles over, and that from Middletown and a couple miles west and about a mile south of that existing pit that Nick has, and that on 240th. This site is pretty much all open. There's a little bit of woods up here that is about 3 acres in size. There's no navigable ponds or anything on this property. There's only one small undelineated wetland, which is right down here, but it looks like they can evidently farm it some years, so it isn't much of anything there. The property, Bob, if we can pan a little bit, is adjoining this parcel here. I believe that's about 34 acres, and there's a pit currently active right in the corner of 230th and 190th right there. That's the Wolf's pit. I believe that the town of Eureka and that also is kind of an operator out of that pit location. So this will be just to the north. The remaining area in this area is zoned ag. You can see there's a lot of woods going to the northwest, and more farmland going to the southeast and to the straight east. The county provided a class 2 notice on that for this hearing. And with that, we received quite a few letters of objection. I provided those to the committee and that through 3 emails and that yesterday. Those exhibits that you guys received via email are in the packet as exhibits 3 through 9. Just to submit them into the file so that I don't have to bore you by reading them all. Exhibit number 1 is the Town of Eureka Resolution number 2102. And I'll read this resolution. It's a resolution for the Town of Eureka changing a parcel of land from Ag 10 to Mining 1. Whereas Nick Walton Properties LLC, owner of the real property in the Town of Eureka, requested the change in the town zoning map for this property identified as a parcel number and then the northeast quarter, the southeast quarter of section 2. And therefore it be it resolved that the Town of Eureka, Polk County, Wisconsin, request changing the town zoning map as follows from Ag 10 to mining. And that's signed by Don Anderson, the chairperson, dated the 14th day of January 2021. And David Anderson, the clerk, attested that. and it was approved by a roll call vote of 5 yeas. And that was the result of their January 14th meeting. And that's where they made the motion to approve it as well. So that's kind of where that was. I did have a conversation in that with Rick Webster and that one of the board members did this morning, and Don Anderson. They informed me in that the town had called a special meeting and that in February to talk about this again. But after talking more with the applicant and his proposal for the site, the town is completely on board in that with the process. If there's more than an acre opened up at any time for more than a year, and that with either of these pits, there will be a conditional use permit process that will have to be followed as well. And that conditional use process will involve a public hearing, the ability to sign conditions. That'll be back in front of you if the applicant is going to be larger than that in order to require the CUP in our ordinance. So otherwise, and that underneath our mining classification, the normal agricultural 10 uses are the underlying uses that are permitted without that actual conditional use, which is exactly how it's zoned today. So.
Did you say, Jason, that was a 1 acre maximum open?
Correct, without a CUP. So, yep, or if it's going to be open for more than a year. So, I believe the applicant's plans are probably going to need a CUP. Any active mine on that underneath our mining district has to have a 100-foot property line setback to any boundaries. They are able to stockpile the overburden or the topsoil and that within that area and that to kind of make a berm and that also helps to actually reclaim the site because it makes the site internally drained. And that's so that we're not providing runoff off these sites that way. So.
How far away was the other pit, did you say?
The other pit, and that is on the adjoining parcel, but it'd be approximately a quarter mile south. So it's right here in the corner. It's not a real active pit, but there still is stockpiles of material there.
Okay, you still on with us, Nick?
I am.
Okay, go ahead, give us your comments on the Eureka site, please.
Well, virtually the same as the other site, but what my plan there is to keep the smallest amount open at one time. And again, the same farmer has been farming this land for quite a few years. I want to keep him farming as much as possible. I want to open up as little as possible, but enough to do what my plan is. And my plan is to have a pile of gravel there for my own use. And also I know the township had mentioned they would like some gravel and most likely a pile of sand there. I would like to screen the rock out. And again, I would be hauling the rock over to my pit by Luck on the north side of 240th, where it would be washed and processed there. So virtually just screening, crushing, and try to keep as much farmed as I possibly can the whole time so I don't have to pay the big fees for the open pit.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Nick, is this going to be open to the public?
If other contractors would like to come in there and load out from time to time, we will sell them material, but we are not going to have anybody there manning that pit. We're going to have a locked gate on it. And the only time that people would be able to get in there to get anything is if we go there to load them. We're not going to be letting anybody else load there by themselves, except for the town of Eureka. If they have a project and they need gravel, we would let them go in there and load themselves. Ultimately, though, nobody else. So it's not going to be open to the public during the day, all day. The only time it would mainly be open is when we're in there crushing or when we're loading ourselves. Otherwise, the gate's gonna be locked.
Thank you.
Anything, Tracy? Okay. All right, thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, Ben, you've got some individuals upstairs.
Mr. Chair, just a reminder, when you come up front, please state your name and where you live. Would anybody like to make a comment?
Hi, I'm Tucker Cramlett. I live at 2334 190th Street, which would be right across from this property. First, I would like to submit into the record the agenda meeting for the January 14th meeting that did not have a land description of where the rezoning was going to, so we didn't have a chance to, didn't know where that was at and didn't have a chance to go to the meeting for where this property was at. I just said that. Then I have a little statement I made here. I'd like to say thanks for the time here this morning to talk. There's a handful of people here in the audience that are opposed to this rezoning. Then, where am I at? I submitted some emails on some studies that were done on mining gravel pits for air quality, groundwater, property values. The township had a special meeting on the 15th where we found out that the driveway to access this property will be across from our driveway, very close to it. That brings up the issue of silica and heavy dust from the truck traffic. With prevailing winds out of the west, northwest, that'd push a lot of the dust directly towards our home. Silica presents a huge health issue to people. Next, I'd like to talk about the groundwater. With work in the construction field most of my life, I know that breakdowns happen. Blown hydraulic lines can dump gallons of oil on the ground. Fuel lines can break and come loose and leak over time. Coolant lines can break and gallons of fluid can end up on the ground too. Ethanol glycol and propylene glycol can move through the soils quickly and contaminate surrounding wells. The meeting on the 15th, Mr. Walton said that in a phone conversation that the field would still be farmed. That brings up fertilizer being spread. And if animal waste is used, that can introduce bacteria and elevate nitrate levels to the aquifer from the topsoil and other undesirable soils being removed that help in the filtration process. Which Mr. Walton also stated that he'd keep the pit private, and like he just said, from time to time, there will be other contractors in and out of there. But what happens to that, that increases truck traffic and compounds all the other points that I just brought up. In conclusion, I ask that the committee halt the process for rezoning this parcel of land or send it back to the township so we can have a discussion with the town board. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Hello, Selena Lang. I am, my husband and I were across the road as well from this property. We are one of the bordering properties within 300 feet that received the letter from the county. 2362 190th Street, Centuria, Wisconsin, 54824 is our address. I have this here that I wrote. I would like to thank you as well for taking your time to listen to all of us and to listen to the emails and phone calls. So From going to town meetings of Eureka and talking to people that live near and around parcel number 020-0038-000, a big concern is increase to large truck traffic posing danger for the residents of 190th Street and intersecting roads. 190th Street does not have much for shoulders. It has steep banks. It's a narrow road with steep hills. When approaching oncoming traffic, especially large trucks, there's little to no room to move over or pass each other. You also see people walking, riding bikes, and driving ATVs, as well as lots of homes with children getting on and off buses. Increased large traffic does not mix well with people walking, riding bike, driving ATVs, and children and adolescents getting on and off the bus. Another concern for residents of 190th, more so for those that are bordering the property, would be of the proposed gravel site is air and water pollution. Dust blowing in the wind towards homes when they're digging up from the dust piles that are existing, from crushing, and large trucks driving over bare ground are all things that can release particle matter into the air, which we would be breathing. And as the previous person spoke about, different chemical things that can be polluted, that can go into our ground, that can pollute the groundwater. Particle matter, when it gets in the air and you breathe it, it has your increased chances for health issues in regards to lung and heart effects. And I've read this in different various books that I've researched. My husband and I moved to our property about a year ago. We moved there to that land to have more land, but also to have peace and quiet. We have 2 young children. We ride bike, we play, we ride bike, we walk. Our yard and our house is near the road. Our safety, our children's safety, as well as our neighbors and all the people up and down 190th or intersecting roads is a concern. This gravel pit can potentially increase all of our risks for danger and affect our health and safety. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for taking into consideration all of the emails, the calls, and all the people that are here, that are attending here that have concerns. We have about 17 people here in the audience that I've counted. No 2 gravel pits are alike. Each gravel pit will pose its own set of issues, whether it be negative or positive. Just because one location works for a gravel pit doesn't mean that another location is going to work. There's a lot of differences, and I don't think we can treat all locations the same. This location, I do feel that does have more risks that come along with it for the people that live around it. That's what I have here for what I've wrote. There is a few people that have signed a petition. I'll give this, it's a copy. I have the original. It's a copy. It's people that are in objection to it. So I will hand this over right there. Thank you again, and I appreciate your time. I am Amber Thompson. I live directly across from the property as well, 2334 190th Street, Centuria. I was just, listening to this, and like I've talked to Tucker, because I live with Tucker here. If this does go in and gets approved, could we have this pushed back like 300 feet from the driveway and have depth restrictions on this mining if it does get approved, so that we don't have to worry about the water quality and that sort of thing? Can we have some restrictions, something put in place for our water and our air, so that we can at least have this 300 feet from the driveway and at least depth restrictions on it? Because if he does just get this approved, he can say this is what he's going to use this mining for. It might be private and only open to certain people, but at some point, if it does get approved, he can pretty much want. And so I would ask that some sort of restrictions or some sort of boundaries or some sort of, policy gets put in place that we're held to what is being told to us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Scott Weinberg. I live on 190th Street with my family in the town of Eureka, approximately 1 mile south of the proposed mine site. I am opposed to the rezoning of the parcel from Ag 10 to mining M1. I sent an email to Jason with a risk assessment I completed for the proposed mine, and you should have that with your materials. The risk assessment matrix I use is from the U.S. Forest Service, and the process of risk assessment is widely accepted and used by various public and private entities. In that document, you'll find numerous references to support my arguments. So in that document, I identify 5 potential hazards and assess the risks of those hazards based on 2 things: the likelihood or the probability of a mishap occurring, and the severity of the consequences. So in this instance, since the proposed mine is in an area with many residential homes, the consequences are inherently much higher and the risks end up being higher as well. The 5 hazards I identified are public safety, which you heard some of the other folks talk about, hydrology, economic loss, noise pollution, and air pollution. Of the 5, 3 had risks that rated in the high to extremely high categories. These include public safety due to increased truck traffic on 190th Street and the proximity to homes. That road is narrow, it doesn't have a shoulder, and it's not made for heavy truck traffic. Also, by my count, there's approximately 12 to 15 children that live on that street, and all but 2 houses on that street have children in them. So there's a lot of kids, and they're all spread out along that whole location from County Road G up to 240th. Hydrology, I've heard some folks talk about. There's an inherent risk involved with removing the filtering capacity of the soil. So when you remove that filtering capacity, it increases the potential for contamination of the groundwater if a spill does occur. Economic loss, since no one is going to want to pay as much for a house that overlooks a gravel pit as opposed to one that does not, there's an inherent loss to the economic value of people's property, especially those nearby. In terms of air pollution noise pollution and air pollution, those I rated as high and moderately high respectively. And I averaged the 5 hazards, the risks amongst those hazards that came out as high. And what does this mean? The activities that have risks as high or extremely high should not be undertaken unless the risks can be mitigated to drop them to an acceptable level. And in my opinion, that level would have to be low to medium low, given proximity of the mine to residential housing. And as I mentioned before, given the fact that there's residential housing and many houses nearby the mine, that is precisely the reason why this rated as high. Had it been anywhere else, it would not have been a big issue. In my opinion, putting in a large aggregate mine amongst residential housing is an inappropriate and unwise land use practice. The 2 land uses simply are not compatible with one another. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Go ahead, sir.
I'm from Eureka Township myself. One thing that really concerned me more than anything
What's your
is,
name, sir?
pardon me?
What's your name?
Randy Clark. Okay. In a conditional use permit that we insist on there being one there and covered like 3 major things. One is water table. So I've experienced firsthand many times for a contractor will go in and he'll dig till he gets to the water and then you're in trouble. And there has to be a zone in there that's undisturbed that filters everything out before it gets to that. And the other thing is truck entrance. There has to be a fair amount of nothing but rock on that road where the trucks can rattle the sand off before they get on the road. As soon as they get on the road and that wet sand from a wet day gets on the road, it's gonna blow into people's yards, okay? That's another condition of it. And the other thing is, in this particular case, they say there's gonna be no washing done. So I would submit that on the conditional permit, there never be a well drilled on site so that it could fall up to for a washing thing or something like that. So today's washing, a lot of it doesn't get done like it used to be done, just with a screw and water floating the clay off. It gets done with chemicals. And these chemicals get back in the ground. And all of our bodies, everybody's body, 90% of your body is water, okay? It only takes a small, minute amount of contamination to destroy that body. And I think we're realizing that all over the world today, and especially in mining operations. So that's basically what I got to say is that a conditional permit could be accompanied to a zoning change. That's all I got to say.
Hi, my name's Dave Lang. I live at 2362 190th Street, Centuria, Wisconsin, directly northeast of the proposed site. And I'd just like to talk about the lay of the land, because if you look at it in a topographical situation, it's at the top of a hill. A lot of the currents coming from the air current coming from the west creates a kind of a natural thermal current that kind of pulls all the wind up that big valley in the hill. And we enjoy not having any mosquitoes at our house because we live on the top of a hill. We have a woods directly east of us. And all the air from that farm field blows up through the valley and up the hill and blows right at our house. We enjoy a nice breeze in the spring. In the summer, with our windows open, we enjoy that. But if they're going to be over there crushing dirt and kicking up dust, that's going to bring all that air from that field directly at our neighbor's house south of us and right at our house. It's hard to prove, but if you could see this location on a topographical map, they call it the road directly north of us, 240th, the roller coaster road. I mean, we're sitting at the top of a hill. There's blind intersections, blind spots everywhere. Just a bad location for truck traffic. Not to mention the steep banks on all the roads. I mean, you're on the top of a hill, so when you have a narrow banked road and you look down on the side, you can be 12 to 40 feet down before you hit a tree line. That's, I guess, will be my biggest concern. And that's probably all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments? Mr. Chair, that looks like it's it from the west.
Okay. Nick, you want to respond to anything?
Well, I can understand these people's concerns. One of the things that we do quite often in our mines, if there is dust, we don't want dust in our mines. It's hard on equipment, it's hard on the operators, and we don't want dust flying around. So I do have a water truck, and that is one of the things that I do quite often is I keep the driveways and that sort of thing watered down enough for dust control. Also, these mines are under MSHA restrictions. And so MSHA is very strict on noise and dust. So it's not a big issue. It would be a concern of mine that it's going to be bothersome for anybody. I know that other people next to my other mines all say they make comments that we don't even know you're there. We don't even hear you. We've heard them comments quite often from people. So also, and as far as safety is concerned, I know I have talked to the town chairman, Don Anderson, about relocating a driveway to make it in the best, most safest area as possible. I don't want to have any problems. The last thing I want to have is liability problems with any kind of accidents or anything on the road. You know, the road is 45 miles an hour, and I just don't see where that road is a big hazard for dump trucks. You know, we do have dump trucks going up and down that road all the time with other mines on the road. So that's about all I really have to say. Like I say, I safety is a big issue of mine, and I don't want to change anybody's life or anything. I just want to have a small mine. It's not going to be a mine that's going to be 200 feet deep. It's not nothing extravagant like that. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Any more questions from Nick or? Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing at 10:14. So discussion. I guess I didn't realize he has to keep it under, under an acre at any one time, or it is going to come back for a conditional use permit. So, an acre is pretty small in the overall scheme of things, as far as what's going to be open at any one time.
I can't give you figures, but I know that the size of the pit depends on, I think it affects the bond and the cost. So a lot of times they reclaim this land so they can open this land over here.
Yeah,
So
you want to
you're maintaining a small.
keep it as small as you can in the scheme of things. And even here, he can't go over an acre in size, right, Jason? Otherwise, it is back in front of this committee for a conditional use permit again. If that's him or if it's the next owner or three owners down the road.
I can read the allowed uses in that of the mining district. I think that'll kind of explain. And so all allowed and permitted uses in the Ag 10 zoning district, which is what it's going zoned as right now. Pre-existing non-metallic mining activities can remain to operate as they are. And that limited, short-term non-metallic mining activities, and that's defined as, and that ones that do not meet the definitions and standards for pre-existing non-metallic mines, so it's a new mine, and that will be commenced and completed within 1 year, and that from the date of the start. So when that's not the case, and that if they want to be more than a year, and that they're not going to be short-term, and will be limited to not more than 1 acre in area open at one time. And so that's where, that they're limited in size. So basically, if they're going to be mining more than 1 year, they're going to be over an acre in size, they got to have a CUP.
So if I open that acre up on July 1st, next July 1st, I have to have that acre closed. I can open an acre somewhere else, but that.
Even if it's only a half acre and it goes over the 1 year time period, it's still going to take the CUP because from the aerial there, you can see there's no pre-existing mine on site. So
right.
None of that provision qualifies.
I actually drove up through that area and that you can see the gravel pit that Eureka still uses sometimes is still open there. And then this is north of that, but so that road has already been used for trucks going in and out of that other gravel pit over the years. And I don't know how, if Eureka heard a lot of complaints about that or not, but it didn't sound like it when I spoke with the Eureka chairman and stuff. So
From my conversations this morning with Rick and Don, and that, I think that the town would be willing to vet, and that their citizens, and that through another meeting. And that if there was a CUP application applied for, and then we might see comments from the town, and that is kind of some proposed conditions, kind of like we've seen with Osceola down there with that wedding barn. So it did seem like they were interested in looking at it then if it got to the CUP. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, because then you're looking at more than an acre. At this point, when it's never more than an acre, I don't know how big a pile of gravel you can get out of an acre. It isn't going to be a huge amount at any one time sitting there, because an acre isn't, when you look at it, an acre is pretty small in the scheme of things. You're thinking about opening it up, crushing a portion of it, having a pile. There's not a lot of room there.
217 feet by 200 feet, it's less than a football field square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean they can't come back for CUP either.
Right.
Correct.
But then at that point, there is conditions that can be put on, and all of those things. If down the road, Nick or somebody else ever comes back, but I think the fact that it has to be an acre or less enclosed every year within 12 months. There's not going to be a lot of extended activity in any one given spot.
No. And a lot of what we heard today deals with CUP versus zoning change.
Yeah.
So it's, we see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Where the concerns are something that need to be brought up during the CUP process. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the record, Mr. Chair, I would like to take and mark that petition and that was submitted as Exhibit 10. I'll get a copy of it up there, but
okay.
I would like to.
Any other comments, questions?
One more, and that's it. But like Clam Falls and Golden Lake, they're a 3-person board. Reed is a 5-person, and they all unanimously voted for.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wasn't anybody.
No. And even after a second meeting with residents, they still were in agreement.
A few conditions added.
Yeah.
The CUP is warranted, but for the majority.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they're going to, at some point, if Nick or whoever down the road, then the town board is going to be much more engaged, because it is going to be more than an acre. It is going to be,
Yeah.
and then, like you said, Sean, a lot of them concerns come into play in the conditional use process.
Yeah.
But right now, staying in an acre, that isn't much of a chunk of ground. To have a mine on. I mean, it's, and so I don't see it being a real big problem, I guess. And if the town wants to work with them for a different driveway, that's a town issue. It's their road. Decide wherever they want or don't want a driveway. So I guess with that, we would entertain a motion one way or the other on the Eureka mine.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
My phone calls. That's why I was asking Nick those questions, because I thought that had, he cleaned that up. Like, yeah.
Before we move on, Mr. Chair, that to go over our findings of fact. The applicant stated that he operates under MSHA requirements. He also stated in that his intentions are to stockpile sand and gravel on the site. That it'd be primary for his own trucks, but the town or other contractors could be in there on occasion. Any rock would be hauled from the site and that to the pit that he currently operates out of on 240th for washing. There's a adjoining pit to the south, which is on the adjacent parcel. 190th Street tees into 240th Avenue, about a mile to the north. There's a 100-foot setback from all lot lines for any mining activity. There's one undelineated wetland on the property, but there is no navigable waters on site. The 39.02 acres is mostly open, except for about 3 acres of woods in the northwest corner. And then a conditional use permit would be required if over 1 acre is open, or if the pit is open for longer than 1 year at a time. Any other findings of fact that the committee would have?
Clarification on that last one, I think, and maybe it's just me, but you said that the pit was open from more than a year at a time in that spot.
And if not, going on to the conclusions of law, County of Eureka approved the rezone. The use is compatible with the surrounding land use since there's an existing mine on the adjacent parcel. County comprehensive plan allows for non-metallic mining in this area as well as agricultural uses allowed underneath the mining district. And the existing land use is Ag 10, and that which is one of the permitted uses of the mining. So, anything there?
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Are they here?
Got 5 minutes, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you want to take a short break.
Yep, no, that's what I was gonna say. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, so, because this is gonna be about 45 minutes. So that I can get out of my chair in 45 minutes, we're gonna take a break now.
No, it's great timing.
Yep, no reason to travel if you don't have to right now.
10:40.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you very much. Good morning. This is a great pleasure to share this project with you. And for the last 10 years, our Land and Water Resources Department has put a lot of time and effort into this project, and we're pretty proud of it. We've built some wonderful relationships with some great people, and we've really been able to define the way conservation practices are implemented in our county and across the state with this program. So with that, I want to start out with some introductions. We have a few of our producers here today that play large parts in the Watershed Council. We have Scott Carlson here from Carlson Farms. He is one of our council members. We have Tim Johnson virtually there as well. So I'll introduce Tim. He is a big player in our Watershed Council and quite frankly a visionary for a lot of the things that we do. We also have our Watershed Coordinator, Bill Hogsett. And we'll talk about Bill's contributions a little bit too. But first, I want to start out with a video that was put together, boy, I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago now. That's gone a long ways in helping us start the conversation and present some of the reasons why we've got such good citizen engagement in this project. So with that, Bob, please share this video. I'm sure hopeful that this works. Oh yeah, looks good so far. Well, we're going back to the presentation here. I really don't know how much more one can say, but you know that's a pretty powerful video, and it's been well received. And, We'll touch on kind of how this came to be in this presentation to start. So as I said, we've been working on this project for almost 10 years now. And it started back in 2011 with a planning effort surrounding the 9 key element plan or total maximum daily load for phosphorus project for the Lake St. Croix. And through that 9 key element process, the potential of citizen engagement was really keyed upon. And to demonstrate the potential of citizen engagement in water quality and soil health issues, we brought up an Iowa Extension agent and one of their farmers from the Hewitt Creek Watershed Project. And they came and spoke to us, our implementation team meeting, came and spoke to us about a project that they were working on in Northeast Iowa. And with that presentation, ideas for this project were kind of born. They had a similar project down in the Hewitt Creek watershed, and they had engaged a lot of ag producers to begin a peer-to-peer learning type approach, demonstrating good practices and being successful in adoption of those practices. So it got a lot of traction. And following that presentation, 4 county land conservation departments, Polk, Dunn, St. Croix, and Pierce County, got together with Wisconsin DNR, UW Extension, and collaborated to develop a similar program under that model. And we secured funding in 2012. Next slide, please. So the project area you see here is there, and this is just for our, well, what I still might call our original pilot project of these 4 watersheds. Horse Creek, obviously here, the Hay River watershed, Dry Run Creek in St. Croix County, and the South Kinney watershed in Pierce County. Next slide, please. So who we are, and I always say we because our land conservation staff are just as much a part of this as our producers, and we're taking a lot of pride in this project, and we own it just as much as our producers do. So we really are holding this project a priority. But we are a watershed council is a diverse group of agricultural producers with different operations and common goals. We care deeply about the future of agriculture and the productivity of our lands for our future generations. We have 7 active agricultural producers from that Horse Creek and Squaw Lake watershed area. We've got 2 Polk County LWRD staff for technical and administrative support. And we have 1 project coordinator, Bill Hogstaff, who through a partnership with Wisconsin Farmers Union, they hold that particular position. The mission is the Horse Creek Area Watershed Council is a voluntary, producer-led environmental management program. Our mission is to inspire producers to adopt best management practices dedicated to protecting water quality and improving soil health. Our project area is seen there. That is the Horse Creek watershed in its entirety, running from just west of Deer Lake all the way to the county line at Cedar Lake. And shortly after this project began, we decided to also include the Squaw Lake watershed. Both of these watersheds contribute to 303D listed impaired waters, Squaw Lake being an impaired water for phosphorus and nutrients, and Cedar Lake being impaired as well. This is a pretty important slide because this project wouldn't be possible without partners. And that is really kind of the beauty of this project is there's a number of citizens, agencies, nonprofits collaborating to make this project possible. Obviously, Land and Water Resources is a partner. We've partnered with UW Extension and UW River Falls in the past. Wisconsin DADCAP is a partner. Wisconsin Farmers Union is a partner. We also have had good relationships and partnerships with local lake protection and rehabilitation districts, which I'm extremely proud of. It speaks volumes when the lake residents and community can work with the agricultural community in a positive way. It doesn't happen just anywhere. McKnight Foundation and Federated Co-op have also been partners. This photo is a pretty important one, taken in September of 2013. This was what turned into be a budget initiative tour. We had representatives from the DNR at the time. The individual in the middle there is Matt Maroney. At the time, he was the deputy secretary of the DNR. And then in the background here, we have John Petty, who was the interim secretary of DADCAP. There's a few other representatives from River Falls here, Polk NPM program, Stephanie Schneider from DADCAP. But they came and toured what we were doing in the Polk Creek watershed. And this was the start of a $250,000 budget initiative in the state of Wisconsin to help fund producer-led programs within the state of Wisconsin. And that kind of, originally it was kind of leaning towards the DNR, but then it came around and became a program offered through the Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. This has been a very successful program since then, and they've actually allocated more money in the last 3 years or so. Today, the program budget is $750,000 each year and has funded 31 different producer-led projects statewide from 2016 to 2020. In 2021, 30 groups are funded. So that's an example of local initiatives resulting in statewide change. The goals of the council, a few bullets here. One, proactively address issues to prevent regulation. Increase farmer engagement in soil health practices. The peer-to-peer learning sort of approach. Ag producers demonstrating good practices to other producers with the hope of adoption. The goal has been to expand into additional watersheds. We've seen that, and actually some of this work has resulted in other prospective watershed councils within our county and the state. There is one additional watershed council that's beginning to set foot in the Apple River watershed, and we hope to work with them a little bit more as time goes on. Soil health improvement, widespread cover crop adoption, and again, mentoring peers in conservation practices is a big goal. Big part of this project is outreach, and each year the council tries to host an annual informational event to bring pertinent information to the local ag community. We've done many presentations on soil health and water quality, and we've hosted the likes of Gabe Brown from North Dakota, and it's taken place in the shop of Carlson Farms, which we're really lucky to have that venue. It's a place where the ag community can come together and really celebrate what they have going and some of the progress that's been made. Do this through cover crop test plot field days, and in a few slides, we'll show you a cover crop test plot we have going. Many demonstrations, promoting conservation practices through incentives that promote soil health. So there is some funding available to help people trial some of these practices. And again, peer-to-peer learning events. Here's our cover crop test plot. This really began with all of the questions of whether or not cover crops could work in Northwest Wisconsin. There were a lot of people that were skeptical. We heard a lot of things about cover crops, and there were a lot of opinions. So we decided, well, we're going to try this and just show everybody if it works. And it's been somewhat successful. We're very thankful with our partnership with Federated Co-ops. They help with the harvest and way wagon. Carlson Farms takes a huge role in planting, harvesting, and site prep. And it gives us an outdoor classroom to really showcase some of these practices. And on a normal year, we're pretty fortunate to bring some people out there and show what we're doing. Last year was not a normal year. Field and stream monitoring, a lot of this is to try and quantify and show results of this work. So we do have a monitoring component within Horse Creek. We're monitoring flow, temperature, water chemistry, dissolved oxygen, pH, conductivity, salinity. Again, we want to see if we can see results in the practices that are being adopted and the work that's being done. So this is one of those ways we might be able to see some results. Next slide, please. We also have edge of field monitors. We estimate reductions of nutrients a lot with models. And models are difficult, not so much to work with, but to trust. They're models that are always wrong, but they're not to have. So through edge of field monitors, we're attempting to try and check against the accuracy of some of those models. So every year in the spring and actually throughout the year, we've partnered with a water monitoring resources monitoring group, LLC, and they help us with monitoring runoff from a few specific sites within the watershed. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier about incentives, and every year the council gets together and decides which practices are most pertinent to their area and which ones will make the most difference in soil and water quality. So we've got a list of incentives. Some of them in the past we've used our soil sampling, phosphorus indexing or nutrient management planning. That's a product of a nutrient management plan. Cover crop establishment, manure spreader calibration to get an idea of what kind of nutrient credit we can give to manure. Field border establishment. These are like vegetative strips on the edge of water to filter runoff. Do some cornstalk nitrate testing to see how much nitrate or nitrogen is left over within the field. Helps with nutrient management decisions. And educational reimbursements for meeting attendance and meeting scholarships to try and get some of the good information regarding soil health and water quality out to ag producers. Funds for these incentives are secured through grants from McKnight Foundation and the Wisconsin Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection. We have in the past got some contributions from our local Cedar Lake district as well. Continuing on the topic of kind of quantifying results, we always want to know how much adoption is taking place out there with some of the practices that the council is promoting. So every year, our land and water staff goes out and we do a pretty comprehensive inventory of the watershed. And this is an example of that. We'll do a cover crop and no-till inventory. And we add up those acres and we can actually enter that into a model to figure out an estimated reduction of phosphorus and nitrogen and sediment from the existence of those practices on the landscape. Okay, next slide. And this is kind of an example of that. The take home here is that we've got reductions. Years we've been operating 2014 through 2020. We've had almost 10,000 acres of nutrient management and phosphorus indexing, resulting in these many pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus reduction. Cover crops. Those years, we've incentivized about a little over 1,000 total acres. There's nutrient reductions and sediment reductions associated with that. Now, bear in mind, these are the numbers for just what's been incentivized. There's practices being installed out there that aren't incentivized, and here we've got the total inventory cover crop planting for those years, and it's substantially more, and that's just within that watershed. We know there's been implementation of cover crops around the county as a result of the council's work. So, next slide, please. We're collecting cover crop test plot data. On this, we don't need to dive into these details here, but I wanted you to know that we are tracking yield and soil moisture based on the trials. We have seen differences in maturity for no-till versus conventional tillage. And this is kind of an example of that. We've got conventional tillage plots here maturing much sooner than no-till. In this particular year, we did see, though not significant, we did see a yield advantage to no-till. Some years we do, some years we don't. But so far, I think we've gathered that there's no yield penalty for cover crops or no-till in this trial. Next slide, please. Edge of field monitors. The take home here is, we're looking at runoff and calculating how many nutrients are coming off there, and we've come to the conclusion that well-run systems with conservation practices and minimum tillage, things like that, can contribute very little sediment and nutrient loads to surface waters and beyond the field edge. So well-run systems have minimal losses. Next slide. So moving forward, here's a couple bullets on where we hope to go with this and into the future. Hope to continue offering incentives for priority practices when funding is available. Continue to bring new information to the local agriculture community. Make efforts to mentor other producers on effective conservation practices. Continue to evaluate the effectiveness of cover crops in Northwest Wisconsin. Encourage the ag community engagement in watershed protection and council operations. There's no one group that's the problem, but we all can be part of the solution in this, so we might as well all work together. We want to encourage new membership to the council. This has been challenging, for a lot of reasons, but we want to continue to encourage participation. I want to explore groundwater quantity and quality monitoring. This has been a priority for the council, and they've demonstrated support for groundwater information. It helps them with their decision making and some of their future planning. And more recently, we're expanding programming into carbon sequestration and carbon markets. This is something that is innovative, and it's worth a look. And I think a fair amount of the programming this coming year will kind of center around learning more about the potential for carbon tie up within the soil and the advantages of that. So with that, that is our presentation. Let's go back to that slide if we could. Bob, sorry about that. I just want to recognize the producers that we do have participating in our council. And it's the very last slide. We have Tim Johnson again here, Brad Johnson, Andrew Johnson, Rick Nelson, Neil Gustafson, Craig Gustafson, and Scott Carlson. So with that, I want to open up the floor. I hope we have enough time. I appreciate you allowing us enough time to maybe have some informal discussions and just learn about the ag producer's perspective, maybe our coordinator's perspective on this project and how effective it is. So I would invite you to ask some questions of Scott, myself, Bill, and Tim, or if Tim and Bill, if you're out there, if you'd like to say anything at this point. I think the floor is open.
Yeah, I'll start. First of all, we want to really say thank you to Eric and Dane for working with us in support of the Polk County Land and Water Department. They've been phenomenal partners in this. I would just like to make a couple comments. In Eric's slide, he quantified how much phosphorus has been reduced. Horse Creek feeds into Cedar Lake, which is a 303 deed impaired watershed, which feeds in the Apple River, which then feeds in the St. Croix River. The Upper River is one of the main contributors of phosphorus loading into the St. Croix River. When he quantified the 3,418 pounds of phosphorus reduction, it's generally accepted that 1 pound of phosphorus in surface water will actually lead to 500 pounds of vegetative growth in the water. So that 3,418 pounds of phosphorus has been reduced because of our efforts translates into preventing 1.7 million pounds of vegetation growth in Cedar Lake and the Apple River. It's not necessary, or it's not appropriate. We're very fortunate that we have a group of producers that want to learn. They're very progressive. The adoption of cover crops has been phenomenal. And it's not just rye, but it's also multi-species. And one picture, the last picture, that was a picture of a radish that's used in part of the cover crop, which helps to loosen up the soil. We have focused on soil health, which the more we can improve soil health, the less runoff we have into the creek and the less loss of soil and the less loss of phosphorus. So we've used a term that's rather a catchy term, but how do we harvest more rainfall? The more rainfall we can harvest, the less runoff we have. So we're looking at learning about soil health, about the biological web, and that's for part of the carbon sequestration and looking forward into learning more about the soil health. So kudos to your committee for supporting the Polk County Land and Water Department for their efforts with us. Bill, I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, sure. Real briefly, I just want to, well, just first, my name is Bill Hoff, and I'm the watershed coordinator with the Farmers Union, and I have the privilege of working with this group of folks here in Polk County. And I just want to briefly emphasize something that Eric said, and I want to just maybe accuse Eric of being a little bit humble about the accomplishments of this group, that you really have a special group of producers and county staff here in Eric and Dane. And Eric mentioned that this group kind of planted the seed of what has become something of a movement in the state of Wisconsin of farmer-led groups across the state. And I have the luxury of engaging with different groups in West Central Wisconsin and across the rest of the state, who are similar to the Horse Creek group that you had here. And I just want to say that you have a really special group of folks here in Polk County. And what they're doing is really innovative. And like Eric said, they broke ground and planted the seed for other groups similar to it to sprout up across the state. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that the funding support for these groups to provide incentives to local farmers just continues to increase in every biennial budget that the state of Wisconsin sets. So I feel privileged to work with these folks, and I hope you guys are proud of what you've got here in Polk County with the Horse Creek Farmer-Led Watershed Council.
Thanks, guys. You know, Tim mentioned something that's pretty powerful. He talked about the influence of the egg producers and their practices in the Horse Creek watershed and how that made better water quality for Cedar Lake. And Cedar Lake probably, boy, I'm trying to remember now, if it was 3 or 4 years ago, pursued alum treatment for their lake. And before that was even considered to be possible, they needed to prove that the phosphorus and all nutrient sources going to Cedar Lake was minimized. And through the council's work and the practices that were put in place, the information that we provided to those researchers and those limnologists that were working on the alum treatment justification for Cedar Lake. They basically showed that the nutrient sources were minimal enough to where the alum treatment would be effective long-term. So with that message and that information, they were awarded funding to go through with the alum treatment. The citizens around the lake approved to tax themselves to help pay for this very expensive alum treatment. And I think they've made at least 2 of 5 total treatments over the course of 10 years to Cedar Lake to improve water quality. But the groundwork needed to be laid first up in the watershed to minimize those nutrient impacts to the lake so that it wasn't just a loss and the alum treatment would be effective. So, that's the connection to lakes and their watershed and how the land can really influence what happens to water quality, and we've seen it right here. And I think that alum treatment has been largely effective up to this point, and we're getting some feedback there that the water quality is noticeably better since that alum treatment, and will continue to get better as they continue to make future treatments. So,
So
any questions?
If you wouldn't have been able to show that there was less runoff coming into Cedar Lake, they would have never got the funding to go forward with the alum treatments if it had been, no, nobody's doing anything. It's the same today as it was in, 15 years ago. It would not have been an option for Cedar Lake.
Right? Yeah. True. Scott, did you have anything?
You guys have done a fine job.
Is there any questions for Scott? Well, I tell you what, this project, and I have to say, at times I do get a little emotional about the work that these people do. And it's energizing for us as staff to have these guys so interested and give so much to a project that they really, they feel is important, and it helps us make this project a priority. So, you know, I maybe am a little humble, but I'm so appreciative of the partnership that we have and the relationships that we've built with these producers. And it's not just the ones on the council, it's pretty much every one of them in that watershed. So pretty proud to have this project.
I will add one point just back to Cedar Lake. I live 1 mile from it, and growing up there, my grandparents had a cabin. It was known 40 years ago as the Dead Sea. They really didn't fish it. It was green, whatever. If you would see the boat landings the last 2 to 3 years, they're just bursting at the seams with boat trailers and boats, and just everything about Cedar has exploded with just physical activity, fishing, sport lake basically. And, you know, I believe without what we're doing and the alum treatment, I don't think any of that, you know, and Fish and Wildlife's done a lot with cribs and that sorts of things too, but that really means a lot to us day in and day out when we're traveling through those areas. To see all that action really makes a difference to what, you know, because we do suffer at times for some of the practices we do, but that is a perfect example of why we do it, because everyone else is getting to enjoy, even this winter. I mean, the lake looks like a village with all the shacks out there. So a lot of what we're doing, that's the end goal. So I want to make that point.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's an important one. I mean, everybody is everybody within the council and the way they farm or manage the land, no matter who they are. I mean, they've got a goal in mind, and I'm really happy to say that the future and the sustainability of their operations are a priority within our group. Working with the other 3 councils, what motivates them is very different. And I'm happy that our group is thinking forward and really, you know, concerned with the productivity of their land for future generations. And I think that's the best reason to be engaged in a part of a project like this.
I would just like to add something else. Eric is rather humble, and they really deserve a lot of credit. But perhaps the most phenomenal success story is there is one farm operation that farms right next to Horse Creek, and they practiced mulberg plowing and, let's just say, less than desirable stewardship of the land. And through our efforts, he's now soil testing, and he's converted over to no-till. He's doing a really good job. And if you would have known this family and known that the change that they made 10 years ago, you'd have said that would have been impossible. But it's all because of networking and respect for someone who's been interacting with this person, that he's making these changes. And it's gonna be a huge impact to Horse Creek.
You know, that's the power of the peer-to-peer learning approach. I mean, Scott and Tim and Brad and some of the others, I mean, they're demonstrating these practices. And I firmly believe that when a grower or anybody, you know, is exposed to some information, knows a little bit more about it, they're more apt to adopt. And so we hold these field days to bring some of these producers that are curious about no-till and cover crops and other practices, bring them into these field days, give them a one-on-one tutorial and answer their questions and try and make them a little more comfortable with the practice itself. And I have to believe that it's leading to adoption. And there's a prime example.
Thank you. It's very, very informative.
So when do you had radishes, the other gentleman said in them corn rows. When do you plant, when are those radishes planted? In comparison to the corn, at the same time? I mean, so.
To get that large radish at the last picture, that needs to be done in like August, you know, after a small grain. The pictures of our plot with just short stuff, Eric and Dane actually do that by hand.
small plot, you can do it that way.
Right.
They just walk down the rows with a hand spreader, to get an example. Certain people in the county are flying that on, I think it's in September,
Yeah, it's usually
first week in September.
in September. Need to get it in by October 15th is kind of the last time when you really can put cover crops down. Our test plot gets planted usually the first part of September each year. And we try and keep that consistent, usually the first week of September. There's a few places where cover crops are really possible within Polk County, and that is, after snap beans or green beans, after corn silage, after small grain, as Scott said, those are places where cover crops can really be put into the rotation and be effective, make a positive impact. Scott's done a lot of work with multi-species cover crops, and a lot of ground is covered with multi-species cover crops. But it's, as he said, it's primarily after rye. Is that right?
Yeah, after small grain. Yeah. So the multi-species really doesn't work this far north after, I would say, September 1st. I think we've kind of seen that in our test plot, which is good to have a test plot. We have some plots with just rye. Rye is easy to get established, and then we have test plots with multi-species. And it's just really hard. You don't get the heat units to get anything established. And, to get a radish like that, you need a couple of months.
A lot of the species in multi-species mixes are not frost tolerant. So that first frost, on average, we say comes the middle of September, and a lot of times that will take out those species clovers, things like that. So more challenging, but rye is quite effective.
That's because you can't kill rye. So.
It'll grow on concrete if it stays wet.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. You bet.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you.
Jim, Bill, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Mark, you're up. That wasn't bad. They said 45 minutes, and I think we were right on 45 minutes.
Good morning. Wait till Supervisor Olson.
Go ahead. I'm just digging for paperwork. I'll still listen.
All right, so this discussion revolves around ATVs, and more specifically to ATVs within the Polk County Forest. I guess to begin the discussion, this is kind of where we're at today in terms of a ordinance. This was put in play, in 1987. The County Board of Supervisors did allow ATV use on the county forest. This was kind of the beginning of the Sterling Loop in the town of Sterling, and also within Summers Lake in the east. That's where we're at today. Basically, ATV use is legitimate use of the forest. It's pretty general. They're allowed on designated trails, and no motorcycles are allowed. So there are penalties associated with that, $50 fine with court costs, of course. And to set the stage of where we're at today, this is it. So moving to the next slide, reaching out to other county forest administrators that have ATV use on other public forests, grabbing Burnett's because they're pretty similar. There's some nuances with time of year restrictions, but for argument's sake, this is kind of the standard of I guess what other counties are doing, at least on the forest. I'm bringing this to you today just because there's been all kinds of questions on the ATV uses. Why can't we do more, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm providing this to you guys to consider, I guess. And when I speak to certain elements as I go along here, this is, not that I'm recommending policy, that's up to you guys. This is just things to consider, I guess, before we move forward with a new ordinance or policy, I guess, on ATV use on the forest, or at the end of the day, we leave what's there, I guess. But again, think of this as an example that would take a couple of tweaks here and there, and it probably will end up a pretty good policy. But the things to consider will be, let's make it Polk County. So, what's common here is, they have to be registered and licensed. What that means is we don't want someone modifying a car, putting straight pipes on it, et cetera, and calling it an ATV. So it gives law enforcement the ability to enforce ATVs. So if it's an ATV trail, it's an ATV or a UTV. Bullet number 2, that remains the same as our current policy. We're just, again, combining it just like the last one. That's in the Burnett type of thing. So moving on, I'll talk about time of year restrictions. And right now, I guess under current policy, we could designate it as winter, but this spells it out a little better and gives us the flexibility to have variations within the trail where, okay, a stretch south of W where there's all kinds of wetlands, ash swales, et cetera, that kind of leaves us with 2 choices. Build it up to make it a summer ATV trail, or if the Snowmobile Council is good with allowing ATVs on the snowmobile trail through that stretch, this is now an option. In the town of Sterling, I do believe that the restriction that exists today, basically June 15th through November 15th, exists because they were worried about forest fires back in 1988. Well, ATVs, UTVs have come a long way with spark arresters. And again, this time of year thing allows a little more flexibility because spark arresters exist in these vehicles to kind of mitigate that fire hazard. So that's the way I'm kind of looking at it. You guys can think different. Some of the trails, could they be opened up today in winter? Yes. Could they be opened up in the summer? Some trails, no, because of wetlands, et cetera. Could they be opened up in the summer if we do some improvements to them with the gravel base, more culverts, et cetera? Yes. So this is kind of the criteria, again, that a lot of the counties are using. Any questions on time of year, I guess? The intent is to allow some flexibility. And finally, that last September 16th through November 30th, that's kind of a category for bear hunters, deer hunters, grouse hunters, et cetera. If we so choose to open a certain trail up. Okay, moving on. And that last one would be, of course, the winter one.
Number 6.
Yep. Again, assuming that the Snowmobile Council is good with ATVs running on groomed snowmobile trails. I forgot to mention, the other thing that you might want to consider deals with the route system, the state trails. The Gandy is open December 1st, as long as it's frozen. Sawmill is open year round. The Cattail Trail is open year round. So there's that element associated with consistency, I guess. for the end user of an ATV, where it could get confusing if there isn't some type of consistent policy, I guess, throughout the county where there's confusion. Well, we can ride here all year, but this is restricted in September. This one's open in the summer. This one's open in the winter. So if we choose to do this, there's maps associated with every one of these, I guess. Okay, moving on. And I covered that number 7 with the spark arrestor. That kind of mitigates, I think, the original concern back in 1988 with the forest fires. And this is just some policy stuff where, you know, reiterating the no off-riding trails allowed back to the designated. One of the things that could become confusing is if we have the orange diamonds out there for snowmobile use, an ATVer sees that and the same markings are used, they see the diamonds, so there's some considerations in addition to opening and closing gates, etc. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you may have on this. And again, it is a lot of, it's replicating what other county forest policies are within the state. And Burnett's was chosen just because potentially there could be people riding in Polk County leading up to Burnett. It'd be kind of nice to have somewhat of consistent policy.
So when do the snowmobile trails close? Is that the 31st of March, or is it March 15th? Or, because there is that date when, boom, I mean, they're just, yeah, they're closed. I mean, it's no different than the opening date. You might have 2 feet of snow, but you can't open them. So what is that closing date?
March 31st, or when trails deteriorate. So it's twofold. March 31st, but basically the county declares them closed under the guidance.
Right. No, I was just looking at the April 1st, if you had that 15-day gap, if it was, you know, if the snowmobiles, the trails automatically closed March 15th, you know, there'd be that 15-day gap to the 1st of April.
But this, the same type of, so this is high-level view policy. All that stuff needs to be added. This is the starting point.
Yep.
You know, it's a March 31st or when trail conditions deteriorate, whichever comes first.
Yep.
I mean, we could leave it the same. I just think this allows a little more flexibility with options. You know, there's no reason why we couldn't open up Sterling Loop year round outside of, you know, it would be, it fit criteria 3, 4, 5, and 6. So there would be a brief period from March 31st until Memorial Day weekend. And the main driver in that, in the forest and everywhere else, the frost is coming on the ground. And if you have a gravel driveway, you appreciate what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, it should be closed that time of year every year.
As opposed to the Cattail Trail, which has, you know, 2 feet of ballast rock, and then,
yeah,
you know, then we're getting in a separate item, and then we're construction cost, maintenance, etc. So just by closing it for that brief period can keep the maintenance costs down.
I was gonna ask, we don't have any dates now in our ordinance, because it was pretty basic.
No.
This is our ordinance now, Doug.
Yeah, that's right there. There's no list of gates they open, close, because the spring is what causes, seems to be what causes the damage when this frost is going out.
Most of the damage, yes. And I guess that's what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, but for consistency for the users, it'd be a consideration outside of the forest that leads to the next discussion after this. does this apply to the sawmill and the cattail, or are we just talking the forest? It doesn't matter to me either way, but that's a consideration to the end user.
So the sawmill and the cattail, they get closed down then in that kind of same time frame, I'll say, because conditions are poor, where they open the four-wheelers 365 days a year, and it doesn't necessarily matter what the conditions are.
If we chose to explore that option, let's say for, we're at flood stage in the spring, I guess we could ask the users on the cattail and the Gandy to do that, but we're kind of getting far apart from that. This is what I'm suggesting on the forest.
Yep.
That's up to you guys, whether you want to implement that on the state trails. That would be a separate issue than this. It's a consideration to implementing this on the forest. For the end user, would you want to apply something like that on the sawmill and the cattail? I don't know. We're talking specifically about the forest today.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to just go broad brush across all of them.
Yeah.
With the, like you gave the examples, this trail has this kind of base, this one has this kind. I don't know if there's one size fits all.
I mean, and it is not uncommon for counties to have these different roads and they're posted accordingly. So with flexibility does require more signage, more enforcement, et cetera. So.
But today we're just talking this forest trails.
So there again, Polk is unique in the fact that we do have miles and miles of state trails. Other forests don't have that luxury. So we've got to make this unique to Polk County. This can be just implemented on the forest, and then the user beware. They've got to be aware of what trail. That's their responsibility to know when trails are open, and we keep state trails the same. Or we implement this on state trails in addition to the forest. That, here today, we're just talking about the forest. I'm just trying to give you guys things to think about.
Scroll up to 5 again, will you, Bob?
Sure. So do any of the state trails go through any of our county forests?
ATVs today? No. A state-funded trail could go through the forest at some point in time. The ATV loop is a state-funded trail. That's different than, the difference is Polk County owns this as opposed to a state trail where the state owns the trail.
Which would be the Gandy and the cattail.
Just like to comment that over the years, and starting the new ATV-UTV subcommittee, it's always been what starts there as Burnett County Forest Land. We never discussed the state trails because the state trails are a separate entity.
Yep.
And they're controlled with master plan and things like that. So we've just dealt with hopefully opening up some of the county. I think they're different. So.
Mm-hmm.
Of which, as you guys are all familiar with, that goes to the master planning process anyway. So.
Yeah. I guess I would like to see us just as I don't know if 5 is the right number, but I guess that's what I'll use as my example. I would like to see us open up the county forest to any time, and not to everyone, but that any time a DNR season is on, that those trails are open. Not necessarily a snowmobile trail, and it could be if the snowmobile clubs were fine with it. But fire lanes, logging roads, you know, that are 8 feet wide, that kind of stuff. So that if on June 1st, you know, the trails, it opens up and somebody wants to go fishing on the clam or wherever it is back on a river that's a mile off the road, and there's a county forest road that leads, you know, within 100 miles of the river, why can't I ride my four-wheeler back to within 100 miles of the river instead of walking the mile back to the river? As long as, you know, I got my fishing pole with. If I just want to go for a joyride back there, then, you know, then maybe not, but it's opened up so that in those DNR approved seasons, it can be used. Somebody can, you know, throw their bird dog in and drive 3/4 of a mile back in on the in Sterling somewhere and go bird hunting. You know, well, if the guy comes out and he's got a bird dog with him and a shotgun, there's a pretty good chance he was bird hunting. You know, and it gives them the opportunity to be able to get deeper in than what the average guy is going to walk and into, I'll say, you know, new territory somewhat. And because today these, for the most part, these woods sit and aren't used because so many spots are so deep in to get to that, yeah, I'm not walking a mile in to go, you know, bird hunting or fishing or whatever, you know, might be. So that would be, I will say, my hope is to open up those logging roads, not to full-blown trails, but to just say, somebody wants to use that trail to go back and go fishing, hunting, whatever it is, as long as that season is open. You know, a lot of them places you get back in, it's a long ways back in there, and you know, I want to bow hunt a mile off the road. There again, I can drive to within 300 yards to where I want to bow hunt, but you know, it's going to take me an hour to walk there. If I got to walk from the road, I'm going to be sweaty. I'm going to be, you know, all of those things. And I don't want to see us be like the DNR that owns all this land, but no one can use it. And I'm not saying that's where we are. I think we should do everything we can to avoid that. Because that's really what the DNR is. The DNR has all this land around the state, but it's like, you can't do anything on it. You know, and if we're going to own all this land, at the end of the day, the taxpayers are the ones paying the taxes on it. So let's let people use it, you know, as long as it's used in a reasonable fashion.
So things to consider with that is a lot of these logging roads are open to vehicles. There are gates, there are berms for many reasons on the forest. One would be illegal dumping of debris. Another reason a gate or berm is installed would be, yes, it's a logging road, but we're not going to maintain it. We're going to let it revegetate. Outside of a ATV, UTV trail being funded, once we designate it, then the expectation of the public is going to be to maintain it. So just a consideration outside of the state funded trail, then where the maintenance dollars going to come from. So
Most of those roads I can drive my truck down. Right? They're not gated, they're not bermed, so I can drive my truck down that road. So I can drive a truck down that road 7 days a week. Or I can drive my four-wheeler down that road 7 days a week if we open them, these same roads up to four-wheeler traffic during hunting seasons. My four-wheeler weighs 700 pounds. My truck weighs, way too much. I'm gonna destroy that road in 3 days in dry weather, driving the truck in. I can drive a four-wheeler in there all summer long and not hardly leave more than a track. So I would rather that we were saying, yeah, drive a four-wheeler in there, than you can't drive your four-wheeler in there, but you can take your 1-ton truck in there. And you know, and go through that low spot that maybe isn't wet, but it's low, so when it rains and it gets wet, you know, it's just wet. And I think we're gonna, I know we would cause a lot more damage by allowing, you know, in allowing trucks in there than we do by allowing ATVs or UTVs in there. And I think as long as it's tied to a season, I don't think you're gonna ever get that many people using trails.
I don't know, this may be a PTAG issue to discuss what gets opened up, what does not get opened up.
I think if we're gonna open them up in the, let's say they're the September 16th to November 30th, they're just saying they're open. Everything realistically from the middle of September to the 1st of December is open. I guess I'm just saying, you know, back it up and give everybody who wants to be in there in the summertime that same opportunity. Because that's what they're doing there. You can ride on it any time. We would be saying there's only a given reason as to why you can ride on it. But if we want to open them up all the time, that's fine with me too. I don't care.
And there again, it goes back to designating which one, which trails you can ride an ATV on, UTV on. Then stage
Right,
two
but
would be what time of year they're open. It could be one of the four, it could be two of the four, it could be all of them. And then the third component of that is who's doing the maintenance? Is it gonna be a state trail or is the county gonna pay for the maintenance?
I like your thought about having PTAG have input into this because they're kind of a cross-functional group. And, you know, from ATV to, and you work with the ATV group. I think that's good feedback to get.
But I think we have to send them something too, no matter what the group is.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to send them a version of that.
Okay.
You know, and say, you know, here's
here's some options.
Here's what we're looking at, so they have something to say, okay, here's what they're sending us.
You have that, but you need to highlight what you want looked
Right, and I think if we could, let's just, use the Burnett County one and maybe shoot through them one at a time, and anybody say, here's what I'd like to change or take out or, or add. I mean, I'll just say, I think the first two are pretty much standard. They got to be licensed and you can't ride a motorcycle, I guess everything after that can be, open for discussion. I mean,
I know this is a general question, but talking about the logging roads, I know where some of them are. How many of them are gated and how many aren't?
In the northeast, almost all of them. In the northeast, the Rain, McKinley, etc., almost all of them. simply because there has not been improvements made to those logging roads. There's a lot of winter logging done when it's frozen due to the drainages, the ash swales, what I call the hydric soils. Basically, the water table is a foot under the ground. In Sterling, the driver of gates and berms would be garbage dumping, or the sheer fact that, okay, here was a quarter mile to half mile stub road for a one-time logging access. A berm is put in place to let it revegetate. I guess in terms of logging, we don't have any use for that road for next 20, 30, 50 years. So we close it to avoid the garbage dumping. I would say the logging roads in Sterling, most of them are left open, unless it's a short stub or et cetera. The other part of so Sand Creek Trail, that would be open, that road is left open. In addition, we receive gas tax money to maintain that road, but you can allow ATVs on that also. I guess what I put together, and it's happening in the other committee, is this is what may lead to a PTAG discussion is, kind of what are we shooting for? Hunter access, to make a trail system that can be marketed. That's kind of where it probably needs to go to PTAG. Does that answer your?
I think we're looking for both of those. Because not every logging road can be a trail. Not every logging road should be a trail. The snowmobile trail crosses W. I think it's in the Mackey Lake chunk, but I'm not sure. To me, it just crosses W. But and on 285th on the end of it, or something, Kucher Road to me. I mean, that's gated on both ends, but realistically, it's a swamp from one end to the other. I mean, not everywhere, but I mean, you could lose a boot in dry weather walking on the snowmobile trail. Well, it's never going to be open to four-wheelers in the summertime. Never should be open to four-wheelers in the summertime. Unless we make improvements. Well, right, and massive.
But,
massive improvements.
Under that scenario, given that the snowmobile club is willing and, we're not upsetting snowmobiles with ATVs, UTVs running down the snowmobile trail, and they're in line with that, that's an option.
Right.
Ben is here, so I can say this, but when he talked about creating a trail, an actual trail on Polk County land, then we have to have DNR approval because they're looking for wetlands.
Sorry, Doug, I'm coming in a little bit behind the curve here. Are we talking about the Sterling Trail?
Well, that's an example because you just said that there's a lot of hoops to jump through just to open up an actual ATV, UTV trail.
Correct. Yep. And the hoops I was referring to, I think what we're talking about here, to get a funded trail for the DNR to fund trail development, there's things that need to happen. Easements, commitments to maintain, all sorts of stuff, environmental assessments, if we're talking about state dollars.
Yeah, and it just boils down to funding. It's with all the projects coming into the state for funding, okay, we're gonna fund this addition in XYZ county that they've got 100 miles of trail and it connects these two ATV trails together. They're gonna fund that before, hypothetically, Polk County's application to open a dead end 3/4 mile trail is what that boils down to. But with opening the highways up as routes, if you can go from 275th to W, it goes from route to route and it connects up with the county trail system, and that actually has a very good chance of being funded as opposed to, okay, we're gonna open up W to that ash swale and then we're gonna put a gate there and dead end it. That doesn't have a very good chance of getting funded.
Would have been like trying to get the Summers Lake chunk funded in '87. It was in and out, a half mile in, a half mile out.
Correct. A loop is harder to get funded than a 20-mile new addition of, of a trail system, I guess. It's a ranking system when the state gets the application, and if they're flush with funds, yeah, it'll get approved. If it's, to me, if you can show, you got to start somewhere. This is the first phase of the grand plan. And you can put this 2-mile stretch fits into eventually a 30-mile loop. That's going to have a better chance of getting funded than we're opening 2 miles.
Would it make sense then, Mark, to, in a future meeting, present targeted opportunities? Say, here are logging roads, here are ideas for trails for ATVs, so that we can then get an idea of what policy should be implemented that would meet our needs.
So yes, it's a kind of a cart before a horse. So basically, to get funding, you got to demonstrate you have a policy to prevent environmental damage on your funded, state-funded ATV trail. Well, here's the policy potentially, and
what trails are we talking about? That's what I want to know. In other words, do we know where those logging roads are?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know?
Yeah, I have a map.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering. Would that be helpful to bring that in to say, here are some potential trails, and we can get an idea of what we're trying to put our head around.
So that would tie into 4 then, I think. In that there it has to be, they're operating them on state-funded trails. On 4, right?
That's what it says.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could look at that map and say, here's where a possibility of a state-funded trail would be. But on 5, you could turn around and say, but all of these spots that don't have a loop, dead end, a mile and a half back in the woods, those could be open from this date to that date, like they've done in 5 there. Only there they've included the snowmobile trails. I mean, I would, if I was going to include snowmobile trails, I would certainly ask the opinion of the Snowmobile Trail Council, their feelings on that. But yeah, I guess I would like to see it'd be just interesting to see the map of where our logging roads and trails are.
Maybe have a priority list of things that we could come and say, here are some ideas of which ones we think are maybe have more potential for state funding or for more use, year-round use or whatever.
If Mark has a map of a 25-mile loop that runs around, I want to call it around the 5-mile loop.
Up in Sterling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could tie that into what you're saying.
And I just think, from my standpoint, I'd like to know, I understand Sterling and maybe some other areas in the northern part of the county. Do we have any in the southern part of the county as well? Just to have an idea.
Do we own any land in the southern part of the county?
Yeah, that would lead to another discussion of, to make a complete system. I'll get to your question. But let me say this, in the Northeast, that's one of the issues that is going to take some time to build a trail system is the mix of private ownership in the Northeast is more limiting than it is in Sterling, just because the town of Sterling is willing to work with it. they're on board if we went across their lands. You know, part of the Sterling Loop is already on town of Sterling land. I guess they gave the county support to make that bigger loop. Now, in the northeast, to make more of a complete trail system, yeah, there's some few key private pieces that are gonna need easements. So to get to your question, is it possible to build ATVs in the south? Yes. However, it's gonna be harder because then we're looking at potentially 100% easements, I guess, to get off highway or off of a state-owned trail, the sawmill or the cattail.
Because really, once you get, I don't know what, Doug, even south of 48, I don't think there's a lot of county-owned land, is there?
No.
I mean, it's all packed in the north.
But there's no reason that, you know, you can pick strategic highway routes that would tie into a grander system eventually within the county that is marketed versus saying all the county highways are open, but here's the Polk County 200 scenic loop, which consists of County Road E to what have you, that can actually be marketed, I guess. Or, you know, that's where the highway department invests some dollars to make a wide shoulder or what have you. Or easements. So to proceed, I guess, you want to see maps. Basically, all the maps are in chapter 1000 in the county forest plan. They're labeled primary, secondary, and you know, I can bring them maps next meeting and hand them out to you. Or based on recent discussion, we take this to P-TAG, or you want to see maps?
I want to see maps. I think we need, if we're going to send it to a committee somewhere, we're still back.
Give them
We need to send them something and give them directions rather than say, here's the idea. It would be to give them direction to say, take a look at, you know, this, and this. And there would be the direction for, you know, for that committee to go. You had your hand up, Bob.
Yeah, and that would include the rewrite of this 1987 ordinance as well.
Well, I guess I would say that's what I would like to send them someone, you know, a draft copy of the revised Polk County ATV ordinance, you know. I think that's what we should send as our document to the committee to say, here's, you know, and here's what we're looking at changing, adding, taking out, whatever it might be. But I think just seeing the map, seeing where everything, you know, how things lay, would be helpful.
It's always okay to see a proposed copy of something, but if you don't see the original, it's pointless.
Yeah.
I like to see an original to know why you are proposing what you're proposing.
Right, but you're
That just-
saying
it
you'd
doesn't
send
work.
them both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
you
yeah,
have to.
yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, a proposed copy, I mean, you're blindsiding somebody. It's like this, you know, I don't even know what it looked like to begin with. So how can I possibly, you
That's
know,
why
it
I
would
was
have to
saying
be
that we
both.
highlight what changes you want
Yeah.
to look at.
Yeah.
Because they may come back and say, well, we've got some other ideas
Yeah.
that would make it even better.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only thing here is, from what we have, virtually everything would be a change from, you know, from 1987.
That's
Which
all
is
we have
fine.
right
That's why I
now,
was
right?
saying, we don't have any dates or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right. Which is fine, and that seems what the intent is to be, but like I
Oh,
said,
we
if you don't have a past versus a proposed,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything.
So that's all we have right now is that. Yeah, I think they should see both.
Yeah, and then mapping, like, you were talking about, Mark, if there's something that you could simplify or clarify or, whatever these guys are asking, that would be helpful. And everything moved together at one time to P-TAG.
Yeah, well, let's,
So clarification question for me, I guess. I'm not proposing anything. So do you want to see the roads with proposed 1 through 4 option, or you just want to see roads map?
I think just road maps. And where the road is, where the logging road is, all of that. So here's the town of Sterling.
Yep.
Here's where our road is, here's where the logging roads are, here's where, all of those things are within the town of Sterling, and then, the next town and the next town, wherever,
The only thing I think he should have his proposed 25-mile loop, because that's
Yeah.
very important.
yeah, no, I agree.
If it could come together.
Because then we could see where that loop is proposed.
It goes right up to the Burnett County border, I guess, and then there's a chance we could tie into Burnett County.
Yep.
So with what you just said, Mark, with putting, is it 3 through 4, whatever that was on there, onto that map, would that simplify things as to where those could be, what roads those could be placed on and when?
Yeah, that's what I was asking, but
Would
then,
that not be simpler than just giving them a map or giving us a map and having us guess where you could use 3 through 5
I
and
guess
when?
that's part of the discussion. I guess that's something I'm personally struggling with here is, we're talking trails, and then we're talking potentially hunter access. Is it up to me to say, yeah, I'm proposing to open this unbermed, ungated quarter-mile logging road to criteria number 5? This is, I think that's bigger than me, I guess.
But if we show the loop, like Doug was talking, the 25-mile, because that's already proposed somewhere along the way, there's discussions about it. So we see that. Snowmobile trails are probably marked on it, or not necessarily.
I can overlay, I'll bring a map that has.
But so snowmobile trails, then I'll say everything else would just be a logging road of some form or another. Because it wouldn't be a funded trail. Right?
And that's my catch 22 is, to date, I've taken this approach of what can we actually do within the forest that will be, we can apply for a grant and this will be a state funded trail. Is the approach I've taken today. That could be wrong of me, but that's kind of where I'm at today.
So that would,
I guess what you guys are asking is, everything I've heard is, we want to see this road, and then we want to know if it can be open September 30th. Well, that's where it's a complicated issue where is there the commitment from the county to maintain them roads before we even have the discussion of opening them? Because if it can't become a state trail and we designate it as an ATV trail, then there needs to be a budget somewhere in the county to maintain. That's kind of the.
So, but 4 would kind of cover the 25, number 4 would kind of cover the 25-mile loop. Because that would be, my impression has been that would be looking at being a state-funded trail. So number 4 would cover in theory, the 25-mile proposed loop.
Correct. And I'm just trying to.
Would number 5 not cover everything else? Because Number 5 is saying you can drive on any fire lane or logging road in Burnett County that's at least 8 feet wide.
Correct. And they would
I'd
be-
just like to see September 16th go to June 1st. And
September to June 1st.
well,
June 1st
move September, take September 16th out and put it into June 1st through November 30th. And then you could ride a 4-wheeler on, or an ATV on any snowmobile trail, fire lane, or logging road in Polk County. That's at least 8 feet wide.
If it's designated. Because that's kind of where the policy begins.
They don't have it designated.
That's correct. This is the policy to do just so.
Yeah, I think if it's an 8 foot wide logging road in Polk County, I think you should be able to. There again, I would change it. What I would, instead of designating that it would, when it was, let me start over. I would say that you could only be on them in a legal, within a legal DNR season. And then you've opened up all of those logging roads. Whoever wants to go there on a DNR season. Hunting, fishing, trapping, whatever it might be. You've said, okay, there it is, in that time frame. The only reason that you can be on that logging road on the county land is to be doing a DNR sanctioned season. Hunting, fishing, trapping, whatever that season is. And then that's the only reason you could be on any of those other trails outside of a designated state trail.
So if on June 1st you were or you claim you're fishing on a trail that has no navigable water.
Well, that's gonna be a tough one.
But I mean, that's something that.
Right, yeah, I took my fishing pole back in the woods and the Oak Ridge had no sunfish on it today.
But that's one of those regulations that if it's really unenforceable, why have it? You know what I mean?
What if I'm a bird watcher?
Yeah.
I'll just take binoculars and I'm gonna bird watch.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, it almost feels like you're limiting it to people who hunt and fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
what your point is you're trying to get, because you could drive on those trails the way
I can drive on those trails with my pickup.
Today.
So my choice is does the DNR want me to tear that trail apart with my pickup or do virtually no damage with an ATV? That becomes the issue. Because you can absolutely destroy that trail with a truck. Or you can do virtually no damage with an ATV.
Well, you can.
Well, you can, right, I mean, that's why Summers Lake got closed, because it got destroyed with the ATV of somebody ripping around in it. So you can, but it's a matter of what the county wants to allow on that trail. And we're already allowing trucks on that trail.
Maybe if it's on perm.
Right. So some of the trails, they're being allowed on. So any trail that I can drive my truck down in the county, but I can't drive my 4-wheeler down it today. Or my UTV or whatever it is.
So the difference is there is not an expectation to maintain these stub roads, et cetera, for pickups because it's a non-maintained road. We designate logging roads to ATV trails. The expectation becomes that they are maintained. So if it's not a state trail because we can't get it funded, then that's going to be the county's responsibility to come up with the funds, provide the machinery, the person to operate the machinery, to maintain that ATV trail that has been designated, even if it is only for hunting and fishing.
So is Burnett County maintaining every fire lane and logging road in the
Yes.
county?
They have a bulldozer, they have a grader, and they have a technician that full-time, that's that person's job.
Well, that's interesting.
Vice Chair, I think, if I may, that given this is a lot of information, sounds like it will involve budgetary considerations, all of that kind of thing. I think this needs to get kicked back to staff, come forward, maybe through the budget process if there is some type of a proposal, especially if it would involve staffing and funding and that kind of thing. Rather than, trying to create what we might want and then look at it later as to what it might cost and how we might go about getting there. Don't we first have to get there?
Yeah, we have to
We
get
have
somewhere
to
first,
get
don't we?
somewhere first before we even know. if
I
we're
mean,
gonna do
I
it.
get it, but it's gonna be tough to put it in the budgetary process if we don't know.
Right.
And that's a good point. I think we need to go back and look at what we're talking about to see how much is there, what the roads are, what makes sense. And that's why I thought if we could prioritize to come back and say the 25-mile loop may be a priority. This area here might be a priority, in Clam Falls or wherever it is. Then we can decide, I think, as a committee or as a budget team to say, what is it that we want to go forward with the fund? But right now, I don't know that we have an idea of what we're talking about.
Have that Mackey Trail loop on there. Mackey Trail loop.
The Mackey Trail Loop, you
That's the
said?
one.
I'm not
What is
sure
it?
which
On
trail.
Gordy's. Isn't that Mackey?
Yeah, oh, like the snowmobile trail through there.
Well, no, not the snowmobile trail. There's an actual, you drive in the side road there to the dead end. The back side of where you come in on the east side, this would be coming in on the west side. There's already not gates, but posts there, and you could ride your ATV through. And there's a loop around the lake. Bob told me about it.
Oh, walking trail, yeah, we've been out there. That's another proposed trail and
But there's a chance you had to fix a low spot with some gravel.
Yeah, so, left unimproved, that's, we're jumping around here, but.
Yeah.
um,
We're kind of going down a rabbit hole.
well, if you look at the agenda items, the agenda item was to talk about the policy.
Yeah.
Today I'm
Let's
not,
bring the maps back next meeting. And then move on from there, because then we can see the proposed 25-mile loop. And we can see other areas around the county. I mean, at the end of the day, we've only got land in about 5 townships, right? We can count Clam Falls, but there's so little of it there, it doesn't count. No, it's Lorraine, McKinley, and Sterling are the big ones, right? Maybe a little in Johnstown. But, all right, let's do that. Bring the maps back, this back again next meeting. We'll try and muddy the waters some more.
Do we have this? This
Yeah, we got
before
that
and after?
last month.
We
Yeah,
got, I have that, okay.
Yeah, it was in last month's packet, but it got punted to
Oh,
this
that's right.
meeting.
I
so-
remember now. So I do have it.
That's what I was looking for when Mark started.
Yeah.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah,
so
so,
I will bring this back, and then all I'm gonna do is bring the roads map, and my point is not to designate these things, but I will show the roads, which then we can speak more clearly to whether or not each one of these 5 time of year things makes sense or not.
Yep.
And elaborate, I guess, on that. I guess my thought was to get the ordinance kind of fixed today, but you guys need more information, that's cool.
Yeah, you're kind of 3-4 steps ahead of me in terms of designating ATV trails and opening them
Yeah.
up.
Just where we want to be, 3-4
That's just
steps ahead.
Attorney
all the-
Brad.
Huh? Hey,
Attorney
hey.
Brad.
Yeah.
Next week, he's gonna have UWCF shirts.
Yeah, yeah.
A what?
UWCF.
Because really our topic is this, updating this. That's our topic.
Not my problem.
All I'm trying to do is, given some
Update this.
constraints,
Yeah.
let's make the policy where we can open up potentially something up in the winter.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Gotcha.
All right.
Thank you.
You bet.
Sorry for the confusion, Mark.
Oh, I guess I'm not supposed to.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Good thing we took
Like when
that.
they're putting their coats on in the back of the room. Well, we're done.
Never gonna let us live that down.
Hold on, I got what? I gotta get this show in the right.
The idea of adding, additional trails or designating trails, because that's a big step as well. First, the identification of those arteries, and then the designation. Are also being worked on in 2 other special committees. So just want to point that out. And then the policy is antiquated, as you all can gather. I mean, there's really a real need to make that more robust and provide clarity to our user groups as well. So we will, as Mark suggested, bring back a draft or a rewrite of that 1987 ordinance, and then some maps of some potential designated trails. As far as March 3rd goes, there really, believe it or not, there really, surprisingly enough, is not a lot of content that could change over the next 4 or 5 days. We normally try to get a draft agenda out by the Friday of the meeting week, so in 2 days from now. All I have really is one, which is really, we have to approve the minutes from our special meeting last Wednesday. I don't anticipate anything from Mo. I might have some more information on the Stallard Trail development. According to our work plan, Mark is to present his annual forestry report. We won't have a rezone until March 17th. And we still have that amendment to the shoreline ordinance for fencing.
When is that coming, just so we get it done before spring permits start getting pulled out?
I don't know how the Muni Code project is coming yet, but it probably will wait at least until the 17th or maybe the first meeting, one in April. Would probably be when we try to get the public hearing scheduled for, I think. So it'll be at April coming forward then.
Also, for the second meeting in March, the 17th, we have Dean Christensen will be presenting from Land and Water, a presentation on non-metallic mining. And I believe that's when Land and Water was looking at rolling out that agricultural stewardship recognition program award. So, and I think by that second meeting in March, we'll have an update from PTEC as well. So there's a lot of substance for the March 17th. For the March 3rd, though,
So
boy, not a lot.
Is there any chance that they could back the non-metallic mining presentation back to up to the 3rd?
You can try that, yep.
Just to try to knock something off the 17th?
Yeah, I'll try to do that. So then, all we would have again is the minutes.
Somebody
Maybe
say-
update on Stour. Try to get Dean to present on the 3rd. And the stewardship program for the 3rd too. We can work on the rewrite of the
You said,
county forest.
Mark had the forestry plan or something?
Yes, sir. We can put that on there as well for the 6th.
We may need to push that one back a couple of weeks.
Push which one back?
Forestry, roads and trails, is that what you said?
No, this is,
Okay.
sorry, Vince, no, this is part of a work plan.
Okay.
Normally in March,
I thought you were talking about
it's the Mark's annual report. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. Granted, the second meeting in March should be rather full, but we could avoid, if you guys desired, a meeting March 3rd. Or we could have just a real brief meeting on the 3rd and then still a robust meeting on the
Well,
7th.
I think if Dane can if he can fast track his presentation on non-metallic mining, I mean, that takes that out of the 17th, which really looks like it's gonna be more than full enough anyway. And even if next meeting, all Mark brought back to us was kind of the maps to look at, of the trails around the county.
The logging road maps.
Yeah, the logging road map. I mean, even if it was just discussion about that, at least we would have filled that portion in at least and seen it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, let's go with that. That'll
Let's plan for-
take a little pressure off of the 17th at least. Because did I hear we have a public hearing on the 17th for a rezone or?
Won't be contested though, should be.
Oh,
quick
so,
and done.
okay.
So, yep.
But it's still
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes.
Okay, March 3rd, well, we'll see what else emerges in the next few days too, but we'll plan on that. Okay. Any other thoughts? I do have one other thing for you all. Any other thoughts? I want to introduce or have Jason introduce Logan Hacker. He's our new zoning compliance technician. Come on up, guys.
Yay.
Yeah.
He's the boss.
Acting chair right now is Brad Olson. It's an unzoned area. and
From
that's-
Clam Falls,
Yep,
but
yeah,
that
yep.
explains it all.
Unzoned, remember that, unzoned.
No, this is Logan Hacker here. This is his second week in that at the county, or third full week, I guess, and then he's had 2 full weeks in that. Born and raised in Luck. His dad did some construction and stuff, and he came from the DNR as a limited term employment, and that. So he'll be doing the majority of the compliance issues countywide. That's half of his job duties, and then the other half is to fill in and that for zoning permitting and other zoning office duties, office coverage type of stuff. That our office became pretty far behind on compliance issues in that last year because we didn't have the time in that to take and follow up on them. So that's going to go that a lot to Logan. Liz and myself will still handle some of the more building without permits and stuff because we're going to be the more of the permitting agents, and he's going to be more on all the other types of violations that we might have come in. So we're hoping that we get a lot more follow-up on those calls and that we get so that we're active out there. So otherwise, you guys have any questions for him?
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys. He'll be taking
Even though I booed, welcome.
He'll be going in that to take his pulse inspector test and that, so they'll have those credentials as well to kind of back up in that for office coverage and that for sewer inspection.
Do you have your fence credentials for Grand Falls, we got a fence issue.
I don't know. Well, it seems like he's really catching on to the ordinances and that. It's a big learning curve, you know, coming in and knowing where to find everything and how the different ordinances apply and that to different areas, because we have some and that don't like county zoning and that, so.
And he pointed at me.
So anyway, so it's kind of a mix and that, so, but yeah.
He doesn't like any zoning, much as county
Yeah,
zoning.
and I'm thinking he came from the DNR. Oh.
Yeah, we're excited to have them on board and, it'll be good. So we'll have them hopefully all trained up and ready to hit the building season and that. During the building season, you know, I see that he's gonna still be spending a lot of time issuing permits and stuff, but he's still gonna have those ongoing compliance issues that he'll have time to follow up on, so.
Did you give them that forgiveness scratch pad? Just hand out forgiveness slips?
Oh, yeah, so.
Oh, that's just sounded Clayton, sorry.
No, the whole goal.
His area is getting smaller. He can't come to Grand Falls and it's just forgiveness in Clayton.
I say Clay has their own zoning.
Just narrowing it right down.
You can tell when these meetings start to go too long, can't you?
I guess we gotta rely on Doug and Mr. Wood.
Yes.
So, for our support.
Well, and Doug, you just got in Bone Lake, what, last time around, right, to zoning? They've been on zone for,
Last time around,
yeah.
but he's not gonna zone, he's mostly doing shoreline, isn't he, Jason?
No. Everything, county compliance, yes. A lot of our junk vehicles, you know, a fence that gets built, you know, and that too close or something. Like I said, the easier compliance issues and that we can handle when we're on site, you know, that are just get a permit or, you know, and that they're building without permit questions. I still plan on taking a lot of those and that for our area, and so does Liz. But the ones that really fell on the back burner were, you know, the junk cars and filling and grading and erosion and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of our goal in that. So we're going to try to do a lot of outreach. Hopefully, you know, that this is a lot of outreach too in that for the county and that. So not are we just running around, you know, slapping people's hands and, you know, and trying to tell them what they can do, but hopefully they'll become more familiar with the ordinances. Like I said, we'll just have a bigger presence out there. So provide a better level of customer service, you know, and that having, you know, another person that can answer calls and stuff, because, you know, last year and that during the building season, I was getting 40 voicemails before noon on a day, you know, and I get another 40 in the afternoon and that. So I know that Liz and I both were behind 200 to 250 calls at any given point last building season. So anyway.
So everybody, the builders will be happy.
Yeah, I think we've got pretty good relationships with a lot of our contractors right now, you know, and that, so that's a good thing. And that's where we get into the compliance issues though, is the people that are not familiar, you know, and that are from out of state or just have never owned a house before or a property. Those are the ones in that he'll be catching a lot of.
Those that just don't care.
All right, Sharon, you're up.
I make a, welcome.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Second. Oh, who's, Doug?